Tell me, though, what's his technique? That last strike, it seems invincible.
Hello and welcome to Sons of the Dragon, the Immortal Iron Fist podcast. My name is Connor McKenna.
And I'm Raven Metzner, the showrunner of Iron Fist Season 2. Hey, Connor.
Hey, Raven. Yes, very special guest today. Very excited to have him on the show, and you guys are as well from the mail I've gotten. So, yeah, really glad to have you on here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. It's nice, always great to talk to people who are fans of the Iron Fist. As a comic book and character, and now I guess I'm part of the I've wormed my way into the mythology.
Yes, you are definitely part of the Iron Fist mythology now. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so we should start like an Iron Fist cult of the Iron Fist. I like the sound of that.
That sounds cool. Well, I guess technically not. I don't know how many spoilers we're going to do on this podcast, but technically, in a way, Davos has sort of, I guess he would be the one who has already sort of started a cult of the Iron Fist. I just don't know if it's one that I'd want to join.
Not going to lie, I'd probably join. I think Davos is pretty awesome, I got to say. Yeah. Well done, by the way, on Davos, and I got to say that fight in Kunlun just blew me away.
Oh yeah.
I go back and watch that fight and I pick up different things. This is a full spoiler podcast, just getting that out of the way now for anyone who doesn't want to be spoiled. But the way Davos uses the technique on Dany at the start to put him into a stroke, I didn't pick that up. When I was first watching, how he does a little touch? Well, he tries to do it on Dany, so it's a really dirty move, and Lei Kung looks kind of shocked that he does that. And there's all these little things in that fight, all these little subtle moments, like Davos taking off his mask to try and get Dany to hold back, and I just really love it so much.
Thank you. Well, it's funny. There's a lot that went into it, and just to add to that, John Worley, who wrote that script, and the whole writers' room, we really, really dug into a lot of. That was episode 2, and we had to. So that fight had to define so many things that were going to come in the season.
Yeah,
and we had to have all those emotional pieces landed there, and Rachel Talalay did a great job of capturing the emotion and also making it an awesome fight. But there was lots of things in there as well that we had to dial in, which are the other things which I think are interesting as well is, the mask that they're for the ceremonial mask that they're both wearing. We had a lot of discussions about how to make that mask a real thing and not just a thing that that's cool because it's in the comics. I mean, we all want it because it's cool in the comics, but and a couple of things that we sort of agreed on in the writers' room, and that Netflix and Marvel were really behind, were the idea that the mask is something you wear to hide your identity. So when you're fighting your best friend, right, and that's the thing you notice when he pulls the mask off, and Dany hesitates, right. But the other thing, which is really cool about it, is the black circles around the eyes. They're not just decorative, right? They're actual eye black. And eye black is used to block warriors. Soldiers use it in modern warfare as well to block you from getting the sun in your eyes, right? It keeps the reflection of the underside of your eyes. When Davos does that move and he pulls the mask off, right? He also left himself open. Yeah. So it works. So there's little things like that I think, and it's really nice and cool to hear that you picked up on those things. We really tried to, especially with the fights, to tell more visually and in action as opposed to explaining every detail like that, hoping that as fans and people watch it, that they, on rewatching, that you find more depth in those moments and sort of more story in those moments. So anyway, that's one of my favorite things that I've ever been a part of, and I in terms of, you know, writing and pitching and shooting, and it's just, and also it's a great moment of collaboration between so many departments, you know, from the acting and the stunts to the cinematography, the directing to the editing. You know, Tim Brinker, who edited that sequence, it's just magic.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you liked it. A lot of people worked really, really hard to make that work.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it was the high point of the season. Like, it was so good. And I didn't even notice that they used it to block out the sun. I really like that. So Davos using a sort of dirty trick on Danny sets himself up for defeat later on.
Well, also, I really like what you're saying. I like what you're saying as well about the Lei Kung piece, because, yeah, we hid that move that Davos does. He tries it on Danny, and then later on, of course, we find out it's not only is it the move that Davos uses on Mr. Yang, but it's also the method by which Danny realizes it's Davos, right? Because only two people in the world could do it. But the other part of it, which I really am so glad you mentioned, which is really cool, is that moment of Lei Kung seeing it and going, "That's dirty pool."
Yeah.
Because a lot of questions, I think, that remain unanswered about why the fight was called seemingly in Danny's favor without Davos dying, when, you know, why that moment happened at the end in that exact way. So I think that's something that, you know, if we were lucky enough to have a season 3, that's a big question and a big area love to explore, is the more of not just the relationship between Danny and Davos there, but the why in terms of Lei Kung and reasoning behind the choices that were made in that moment, sort of for Danny, which I think is interesting. So anyway,
I guess I don't know if this is cheating to ask this, but if the fight kept going, would Danny have won that fight?
Well, I think the question is less about would he have won or would he have done what's necessary which, you know, by the rules, which are if someone won't yield, then they die, right?
Yeah.
So the real question is, would Danny have taken the next step if the fight wasn't called? And I think that's a question, that's a big thing for me anyway when I think about Lei Kung. That's one of the things that to me that occurs is, you know, was Lei Kung, it's a question, you know, was Lei Kung sparing Danny from having to make that choice so that he could keep the Iron Fist, create a different sort of Iron Fist? And I think also, look, it all goes into the larger question of, you know, some of the mythology questions about, you know, what is the role of the Iron Fist? You know, we learned in season 1 that the role of the Iron Fist is to defeat the Hand, right?
Yeah.
Is that always what the Iron Fist was? Who made that decision? When did it happen?
Yeah.
You know, and then the Defenders really laid out a lot of history of the Hand, and that happened after season 1 of Iron Fist.
Yeah.
So no one has drawn has sort of made the connection between we memorialized some of those things, but that were sort of laid out in Defenders, but we didn't dig any deeper. One thing that I noticed in Defenders, which I thought was really cool, is that Kunlun is a place that, while it may have begun at one point, started as a monastery filled with people who were indigenous to the area, that thousands of years ago, seekers such as Alexandra and the other, you know, 5 fingers of the Hand that we met in the Defenders, at some point or another, got there, right?
Yeah.
So that means that for thousands of years, there's been a mixture of cultures in Kunlun, you know what I mean? Which I think is really interesting. So there's lots of stuff in the mythology that was laid out in Defenders that I think is really ripe for, again, I don't have answers yet, and I'm certainly not saying anything that's set in stone. All the things I watched in season 1 of Iron Fist and the Defenders sort of just raised questions for me about that mythology and stuff that I would love a chance to dig into and learn a little bit more about and explore, because I think it's all, especially in terms of where season 2 leaves Colleen, in terms of her past and what that might mean for her, and certainly for Danny, their sort of linked destinies. I think, I have lots of questions that I would love to answer.
Yeah. Just give us 10 seasons so we can just delve into all this hardcore. That'd be great. Make a documentary about Kunlun. That'd be awesome. So, I guess to get the elephant out of the room, is there any news on a season 3? You probably can't tell us if there is.
Well, I have not. I couldn't tell you if I did know, but I'll be very honest and tell you that I haven't heard anything yet about it. But I will say that I am really, 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 really grateful and happy and pleased with the fact that people really seem to be watching this season. It's, at least from what I can tell. I don't have any metrics. I don't have any access to Netflix's systems. I don't. All I can see is from, like everybody else, from people's responses on the internet, from articles being written, from fans that check in on Rotten Tomatoes or on IMDb and give their reviews. And it just, to me, it feels like people are watching it. And I think more than anything, that's why anybody in this business makes things, is so that we can tell stories that are dear to us. And we hope that people will watch and enjoy. So the fact that people are watching it really makes me happy.
Yeah, it broke the record for highest jump season to season in Rotten Tomatoes. I think it went from like 19% to 50 something.
Yep.
So that was crazy. Well done there. I actually really liked the first season. I get why people hated it, but I'm still really happy to see how a lot more people are loving Iron Fist now. That's always a good thing. Because, Iron Fist is one of your favorite characters. It gets annoying hearing people saying, "Oh, Iron Fist sucks" all the time. So, thank you for restoring people's faith.
Oh no, I appreciate that. I think it's interesting. It's something that Finn and I have developed a real rapport and collaboration over this year together, and we've really. I really adore our entire cast, but just in terms of what we're talking about, in terms of the evolution of the character of Danny Rand, Finn is someone he and I talked about a lot, and we both love the character in the comics, but we also understand where the character was started in season 1 of Iron Fist, which, I wasn't there for it, and Finn was part of it, but it was a choice that was made, and he came and did it. And the character that was introduced in that season, in that show, wasn't the same as the guy in the comics, and he had a very long way to go before he could become the guy in the comics.
Yeah.
And so I look at that, to me, the fan inside of me is like, hurry up, Then the TV writer inside of me is like, oh, that's an opportunity, because then I get to travel along with them. And I think of all the characters that, great characters that I've fallen in love with over seasons of television. Like, look at Game of Thrones, like, as a perfect example of, like, you begin, like, not really liking Jaime Lannister at all, and then kind of halfway through you're like, I don't want to spoil anything, but for me, I'm like, I think I'm starting to like Jaime Lannister, and then a little later, I'm like, I don't really like him anymore, but like, you know what I mean? Like, but there's an evolution, right? That's possible in this long term, and so I don't know. More than anything, I'm grateful for people for fans who are willing to go along for that ride, and I really hope that people know that, like, Finn and I both, we are aiming for the thing that I think a lot of people want to see, which is the best martial artist kung fu hero in the Marvel universe, wearing a costume that he's of his, that means something, that we understand why he's wearing it and what the reason is, and that confidence and that sense of humor and that bravado and all the things that we love from the comics.
Yeah.
We want to get there too. We just, I don't know. In a movie, it's one thing. You can open up and the character's already there. Awesome. It's, there's less the need to evolve. In a TV show or a TV series, to me, it's always more interesting to evolve a character, but also I feel like there was no other choice. Like, that choice was made, and here we are, and we're getting there. So I'm really grateful, first of all, as I said, I'm just grateful that the people that are okay with being on the ride as we follow this evolution for Danny, for Colleen, and for Joy and Ward as well, and Sasha. Like, this is a long journey, we hope, it's not episodic, it's serialized.
Yeah, no, definitely excited to see more. Yeah, everyone's asking for the costume, but I feel, well, it's the ceremonial Iron Fist garb. I feel like we have to see Danny get there before he puts on that costume. He has to fully realize his destiny, but we are getting the costume at some point, right?
Well, all I can say is that a lot of people have asked about that. A lot of people have been on the internet about that, and a lot of people have it's a question people ask me. It's like, all I can say is, like, I want it as bad as everyone else.
Yeah.
And also, look, I wanted the mask. And that's why there is one. I wanted one, but again, like we were sort of talking about it before, I don't want to do anything where all of a sudden the guy shows up in a mask for the reason that you've seen in 1,000 other TV shows. Yeah. Like, I want to hide my identity, so I'm wearing a mask, and where's the design from? I don't know, I came up with it. Like, that to me is it's just lazy. It's like, you don't just put someone on a mask. Like, I want the mask to mean something, and now I feel like it does. It means something to Davos. It means something to Danny. It means something to Kun Lun. It's part of and also it has a reason for existing. As I said, like, because of the eye black, because of the hiding of the identity, because of the ceremonial nature, the mask is now something that means something. So to me, it's like, I want a costume, but I want it to mean something. And I don't want to give, if I have the opportunity to bring a costume, I will definitely fight to the tooth and nail to get one. I just don't want it to be there for the sake of being there. I want people to go, a great example, I mean, I hate to talk about a DC character, but a great example is in the first Dark Knight film, the way the mask, you don't have to love it, but the way the mask and the gloves were explained, were like, okay.
Yeah, they didn't just throw the costume on him.
Yeah, it made sense, and then so you just want to, I don't know, I think in all these things, I love the way the costume evolved in Daredevil. I really do. I also think that, and it was really cool. I think, like, I can't say for sure, if we have a third season, if I can't be definitive. All I can say is that I will do everything in my power that I possibly can to get to that place. But I also want to get there in a way that is really grounded and cool. Yeah. And so it's earned.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds great. I'm excited. Hopefully we get a season 3. But everyone listening, keep harassing. Don't harass Netflix, but let them know that you want a season 3. So be vocal.
I think also the other thing I would say about a season 3 is, I think that kind of what I was saying before, the way these things work, I think, is that, the power of an audience in today's media landscape is best expressed by watching it. Like, the more you watch it, the more you tell people it's cool and that they should watch it, the more that you, like, I've been calling all my friends and being like, dude, ladies, watch Iron Fist and don't wait. Like, watch it now, watch it again. Like, and I think the more people keep, it seems like people are watching it, and the more they watch it, I think that's the most powerful message. is because it's such a crowded landscape. You know, like one of the things that I was very proud of this week was, again, to see on, you know, Rotten Tomatoes that, you know, that we were trending at the top of popular television. Like that just means that people are watching it, and that to me, again, for all the people that did all the hard work to make it, there's no greater reward than to know that people are watching this thing and talking about it and you know, and also look, I'm not saying you have to like it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm glad to hear people have different. I think everyone look. That's the other thing which I think is so funny. I was thinking about this morning. I was like, because so many people are so divisive about this season. Some people love it. Some people can't stand it. You know, and people are very passionate about their beliefs. And what it really reminds me of is being at a comic book store, you know, when the comics come in on a Wednesday and everyone's kind of waiting around for the comics, and hearing comic fans have those sort of classic debates, you know, about like who's strong, the Hulk versus the Thing, or, you know, what are the Submariner's wings on his ankle silly? Like, you know, like, oh, they're cool, they're silly, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And people get so passionate, and so I don't know. I think that the more passionate you are, whether you, again, if you don't like it, cool. But I think the best way to get more seasons of the show is to get the word out about watching it.
I mean, people arguing creates attention as well, so there you go. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
Okay. So if you did get a season 3, do you have any idea what you'd like to explore in that season?
Well, I think, I mean, of course I do. I think, look, one of the great things about working at Marvel is it's a very collaborative and amazing, place. And, you know, to get the opportunity to sit and talk to Jeff Loeb and to Joe Quesada and even Dan Buckley about, you know, they have a very kind of like a holistic view of their whole universe, you know, that they're creating on Netflix. And being a part of that universe is really the powerful thing. So, I totally have a lot of ideas, and you know, as I came to sit with all those folks and talk about my ideas for season 2, I really look forward to the opportunity to do the same thing, and to then sort of all put our heads together and see where we can, you know, see what would be possible. I think in the last 5 minutes of the season, I kind of may have said a little bit. I mean, you might get a feeling about some of the stuff I'd be interested in exploring.
A lot of us are hoping we explore that last 5 minutes, because that sounds amazing.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's why. I mean, I think, look, that was something that, you know, again, I've been excited about that last 5 minutes for a very long time, and so has Jeff Loeb. We've been talking about it long before any of the actors knew that's where we were headed. You know, the actors get each episode as they're written along with the crew. You know, the only people that know what the future holds as a season progresses are the writers, you know, and the executives, and, you know, at Marvel and Netflix. So, you know, that where the season was headed for everybody was something we knew about, and in that last 5 minutes specifically, we had to sort of like walk around and keep it real quiet for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think it says a lot about where the kind of stories we'd be interested in telling.
Yeah, because I guess we'll go full spoilers here, because you watch the show and you're like, okay, so all the trailers and stuff kept out Colleen getting the Iron Fist. That was like the big reveal. And then you see the last 5 minutes and it's like, oh wait, that was the big reveal that they sort of hid from us. Like I think even the naysayers of the season 2, like their heads exploded when they saw Danny with those 2 guns. And Orson Randall mentioned, so yeah.
I know. Yeah. I mean, that was the plan. I mean, I think also, it's interesting, we were just talking about before about how, you know, episodic story versus serialized story, you know. some shows are strictly episodic, Elementary on CBS, or like a lot of cop shows and medical shows, and those shows, which I love. You're meeting sort of static characters, right? That change very little. And they're usually, they're usually, you come to like their jam, whether they're the smartest detective or the greatest, whatever. And then there's then there's sort of the hybrid serialized episodic, like the X-Files was in its heyday, where you've got your mythology and you've got your sort of episodic standalone stuff. But this is very, very serialized. Everything in the Marvel Universe on Netflix it's this ongoing massive story. Yeah. And so, I think, one of the really, really awesome things for me was the opportunity to really take this story in a direction that doesn't wrap it all up and go, okay, you saw the whole thing and now things are back to normal. Come back next season for a new villain. Like, we've left it in a place where I think for everybody, you're like, whoa.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What does it mean? Yeah, what does it mean?
We need answers.
Yeah, I agree. I want answers too.
Yeah. So I guess it leads me to one of the listeners was emailing me about, as you're filming, was there any big changes to the script, like in terms of character arcs or anything, than what was initially planned, or?
Well, I think the cool thing about television, or long form, I guess, because it's streaming, is that it's just incredible collaboration, right? So everything is always changing all the time, and it's changing all the time based on a lot of things. It's changing all the time based on getting a better idea. Sometimes that you go, oh my God, you wake up in the middle of the night, you go, that's a better idea. And then you come in and go, I have a better idea. And then everyone gets behind it. Or sometimes it can be literally the weather or losing a location, or, the cost of a set, or, and a great idea can come from any department, the costume department. Go, hey, how about this? And you go, oh, that's cool. And then the cool thing about working at Marvel and with Netflix is if you have a better idea on the day, then, and I'm the showrunner, I'm there, and I go, I want to do this thing. Then, a quick email, a quick phone call, and right away everyone's like, okay, let's do it. Let's go for it. So usually that's not like a major character change probably isn't going to happen in the moment, but certainly, nuances and little fun moments can happen on this, just sort of while you're there. A great example actually is, in episode 6 with Alice Eve, when she's being questioned by Simone Missick, by Misty Knight.
Right.
And she's talking a little bit about being held prisoner, and the scar on her stomach. She says, they called it a demon knife, right? I was on set, and I went over quickly to Google Translate, and I called up. We have a guy who is on set all the time to help us with dialect and make sure we say things correctly. Yeah. And I was like, "Is this how you say demon knife in Czech?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's right." And then I went over to Alice and played it for her. I was like, "Do you think you could say demanovi noosh?" And she was like, "I like that." And then she said it, and it was so chilling and awesome, And so that's the kind of thing where you're kind of standing there and you have an idea and you run over and go, how about this? And the actress is like, you have an amazing actress like Alice Eve there is able to do that kind of thing. So there's lots and lots of things that happen like that are organic and collaborative. But for the most part, you try to keep the big art stuff. We just, you try, but again, if, you're writing them and you're shooting them and then there's a very big difference in something on the page and something when you're there,
Yeah.
when you're there and you're doing it, you're seeing it, then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this really works. Like, I want to be back here. You know what I mean? I want to see more, So, I think there's real, and again, working with companies like Marvel and Netflix, they really give the creators and the creative, the freedom to try things, and to deepen things, and that's really one of the great things about working on the Marvel Universe on Netflix.
Yeah. Cool. Making me jealous. So, I guess, how did what was your first exposure to Iron Fist? How did you become interested in him? Was it getting this job, or did you read comics prior to showrunning season 2? Or?
Yeah. I've been reading comics since I was a little kid, and I think I got my first comic when I was, I think I was like 10 years old. I had a fever, and my mom went down to the corner store and bought me a bunch of comics, and then I got hooked. It's been something I've always been doing. I've been collecting comics and reading comics since I was a little guy. My parents they didn't like me reading horror comics or martial arts comics because they felt they were a little violent, especially
They're the best ones.
Yeah, but I was like 13. So I had a really good friend whose parents didn't mind that he read that stuff. Oh. So I would go over to his house with a stack of my comics, and he'd bring a stack of his out, and we would literally sit side by side, and I would read Iron Fist, I would read Werewolf by Night, I would read Dr. Druid, I would read Man-Thing, anything that was sort of horrific, a Morbius, anything that had, and that's where I really connected to Iron Fist. I really loved him because I grew up on the Upper West Side of New York City, on 105th and Broadway, which is sort of on the south end of Harlem. And Danny Rand and Luke Cage, lived and had their office above a movie theater in Harlem.
Yeah.
So to me, it was that world in the comics was the world outside my door. So I identified with the character in a very big way, in that way. Also, I used to go to a little, there's a little Buddhist temple on 103rd and Riverside, and my dad and I would take jiu-jitsu and aikido classes there when I was a little kid.
Oh, cool.
And so the whole idea, again, I wasn't great at jiu-jitsu, but, there was a sensei there who was a phenomenal aikido sensei, and this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Buddhist temple, and there was incredible people doing martial arts there. So to me, that mixture of Upper West Side and martial arts meant when I was reading Iron Fist that it just, I don't know, as fantastical as Kunlun was and the world of Kunlun and all of that, the character just felt like, I don't know, like someone who lived in my neighborhood. So
yeah, that's really awesome.
Yeah, so then I was working on a show called Sleepy Hollow, and when season 1 of Iron Fist was being talked about, and I talked to Marvel about it, but I was contracted to continue the work that I was on, so I couldn't really, pitch on it because of my prior obligations. So I was very jealous that someone else was doing it. And then when the time came around for season 2, it was just very good timing. I was not on a show. I was thinking about going on another show, but I hadn't yet jumped on it. And I was able to sit down and talk about, and I heard, talk to Jeff and heard what he was thinking, and told him what I would like to do. And then it just sort of went from there. So it was, but it was funny when, as I said, I think that there's been a couple times where Mr. Loeb has turned to me and been like, "Oh no, you're a real fan, aren't you?" And that's coming from, he's a real fan himself, but he's like, "Whoa, what did I do? I unleashed a fan on this, didn't I?" And then we geek out about it. But so it's a character I love. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have the opportunity to work on this season.
Do you have a favorite Iron Fist story or issue?
Well, Iron Fist story or issue. When I was a little kid, I think it's issue 16 or 14, where they introduced Sabretooth. I loved that comic. I thought it was just fantastic. I really, like a lot of people, I think, the Fraction Brubaker run was really the thing that kind of, when that came out, I was very excited by it. I've really enjoyed Ed Brisson's run. And then again, I connect to the early Claremont and Byrne stuff because I read it as a kid. I sat there with the comics in my hands and just read them over and over and over again. So I think it's a combination of those sort of early Marvel Premiere issues and the Fraction Brubaker run. Those would be my favorites.
Yeah, I love the early Marvel Premiere and Claremont Byrne stuff as well. I think it's fantastic. So you read the Ed Brisson run recently?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome as well. That he is finally
really well done.
A confident Iron Fist that protects Kunlun. It's only taken 40 years, so maybe it means 40 seasons later we'll get Danny doing his job. I don't know. But
it's funny. It's actually great that you just said that because again, it's like people forget how long it took to get the character there, and I'm sure. And one of the fun things about Danny in the comics is that he is so sort of feet of clay. As heroic and amazing as he can be, he's also self-depreciating. Has certainly had his ups and downs and doesn't hide them, and I kind of love that about him. He's a little bit Shaggy Dog, which I think is fantastic.
Definitely. Yeah. So, just a quick, I promised Rebecca I'd put this in, third question. So Rebecca's my co-host. She asks, if Netflix had extras like deleted scenes, would there be any fun ones from season 2?
There are, always bits that for various reasons come out of episodes. One of the things, that again, working, with Marvel and Netflix that's really kind of awesome is we have the scripts really early. It's not like a lot of network shows, you're furiously writing the script and you're going to start prepping on the Monday. And, we have the scripts early. So what that means is that there's lots of time to kick the tires. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then we also try to get as much value as we can out of everyday shooting. So what's more sort of that happened this season would be that there are scenes that were written that we would end up not shooting. You know what I mean? Because for various reasons, we'd go, it turns out if we do this scene, the episode's going to be too long. Or, no, we'd rather spend the money and time on this other scene, or we'd rather get this great location. So there's horse trading that we did on the script level. So there's plenty of scripted scenes that I think were a lot of fun that, but maybe we'll get a chance, especially for some of the action sequences that we came up with so many great action sequences, and we honed down to I think a bunch of really great ones, but there were many more that we wanted to do. And, so hopefully, I guess the best answer for her is that there are definitely scenes on paper that were never shot for various reasons, not because the scenes weren't necessarily good. And I do hope that some of that stuff finds its way someday, in a slightly altered form, to a camera so that our actors can play those moments. But, all the really good stuff is in there.
Cool. Well, I'm glad to hear the best stuff made the cut.
Yeah.
So, this next question, well, I guess bit of a heavy one. I guess with a lot of... So I've gotten a lot of emails and concerns about Danny being sidelined in Season 2. They're worried that he's not the main character of his own show anymore. And I have to admit, I do share these concerns. I guess bluntly, is that the case? Is Danny still the main character of Iron Fist? Is he gonna be in the spotlight again? Because, yeah.
Well, I would say that I kind of disagree with the idea that Danny's been sidelined. And I especially think that it's a very loaded word in today's world, and I think that for me, I'm always interested in arcing story and growing characters and evolving them. And I think that, to me, everyone has been talking, as much as people have been saying whatever they've been saying, people have been saying for a very long time that they want Danny to grow up, and they want Danny to stop making mistakes, and they want Danny to be a smart hero and the best kung fu fighter in the world, and to come to a sense of peace and to be confident and all those things, right? And I think it'd be really phony if all of a sudden in episode 1 he was just there, right? Oh wow, guess what? He's here. He's really confident all of a sudden, but we don't know how he got that way. Like, to me, that's cheating, And so as I said earlier, you have to get him there, right? In order to get him there, he has to make real choices, hard choices, and strong choices. And so to me, this season, he starts out, and everyone's like, oh, he's still making mistakes. Yes. In order to tell this story, you have to see him making mistakes, because otherwise, there's no story. So he starts out with a very strong purpose, right? Which is to carry on Matt Murdock's mission while Daredevil is gone, or since Daredevil is gone, and he's determined to do that, and he's really pushing himself to do it, and he's out there being the hero that everyone has wanted to see him be, but he's pushing himself too hard, and he's lost his balance, and he hasn't dealt with all the emotional baggage from season 1 and from the Defenders, and he's pushed all that down, right? And he is still making some of the choices that he made in the past that are not always the smartest choices, or maybe that's not the right way to put it. He's making impulsive choices, better to say than not smart. Not that they're smart or not smart, they're more impulsive and they're driven by emotion. And we learn this season, he learns, right, that what the fist has always meant to him, and that the clarity of using the fist and that power is, in a way, has drawn him in. So for him to go through the journey of the season, have the fist taken away, and in the ultimate moment where he knows he now has the tools he needs to get it back, for him to say, I don't want to hold it now, I want to learn more about myself and find out who I need to be, and I want to be worthy of that power in a new way, is the most mature decision he's ever made, I think. And it's also incredibly heroic. It's the kind of hero I think Danny Rand needs to be, is somebody who looks before he leaps, who thinks before he acts, who uses his mind as well as his body strategically as well as emotionally. And the choices he makes in those last 3 episodes, all the way through, I think for me, we're finally seeing the hero he can become and is becoming, which is so much more the hero everyone's been telling me they want to see. And that last smile at the end where he's standing there with Ward, I don't know, I feel like Danny this whole season is so much about his journey, his life. Yeah. And look, at the same time, yes, it's true. Colleen is not a sidekick, nor should she be. Colleen is, and not only Colleen, Davos has the fist from episode 4 until episode 9. So he's carrying the power of the fist for half the season, right? So he, just as much, he's taken the focus away from Danny even more than Colleen has, right? It would seem, but no, he isn't. He's presenting Danny with what it would have been like if Danny had lost the battle in Kunlun. Davos is showing him who the Iron Fist would be if it's not Danny, right?
Yeah.
And Danny's also understanding and recognizing so that he wants this thing and needs this thing, but he has to be strong and powerful to get it for himself, right? And in the meantime, Colleen has her own story that we've tracked all the way through, that we follow and understand, where she makes a choice. And the choice she makes has nothing to do with the mystery of whoa, she doesn't know anything about that. She just knows that she killed Bakudo and she was working for the Hand, and she was training these students in a way that that it turns out was as a feeder to the Hand, and it's so complicated for her. And she wants to be a hero, and she wants to do good, and she's trying to do it in a way without her sword. And she gets sucked in because of the Triad conflict, and sucked in because of these kids she meets. And at a certain point in the season, even though Danny has told her he thinks she should have the power, and she's like, no way. And Misty says she should have the power, she's like, no way. And then there's a moment for her where she says, my next step as a human being, as a character, is to be a certain kind of hero. I want to do this thing. I want that power for myself, right?
Yeah.
So, to do this thing for me. So, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's like, and also, it leaves us in a place that, for me, demands more story. Like, you know what, like, if the season had ended where, let me pose you a different version here.
Okay.
So, Danny goes to Colleen and says, hey, Colleen, I think you should take the fist. She considers it. Then she goes, okay, you know what, Danny, no, it should be you. And he goes, you're right, it should be me. And then he takes the fist back and he beats up Davos, just like he did in episode 2. And he finally feels confident and he goes, hey, I won. And then the season ends and Danny's standing there and Colleen's going, Danny, you did a great job. You finally got the power of the Iron Fist under control. I'd be like, okay, how did he get under control? He didn't. What lesson did he learn? None. What path has he followed? None. What has Colleen done there besides what's her story? What did she do? Nothing. You're back at square one. You're right back where the season started. And where is the journey taking you? He beats somebody up. And I don't want to see the hero who beats people up. I want to see the hero who uses his mind and his emotions as much as he uses his fists. And so look, maybe that's me. And also look, I had a lot of conversations with Mr. Loeb and with the peeps at Netflix, and again, they're down to explore that idea.
Yeah.
But the one thing we all agree on is Danny Rand and the Iron Fist needs to be a different kind of hero than Daredevil or Luke Cage or Jessica Jones.
Yeah.
He is not a tortured anti-hero. He is not an indestructible black man in Harlem, and he is not a female detective who has very complicated feelings about her abilities and her powers, who's working that out in lots of complicated ways. His story is very different. And for me, and again, I totally am cool with everyone disagreeing with me, and I'm totally cool, Connor, if you disagree with me. I want to create the most powerful kung fu hero in the Marvel Universe or any other, but one who only uses his weapon as a last resort.
Yeah.
I want to create a character who is a warrior for peace. I want to create a character who embodies the philosophy behind Kung Fu, that you should not use it if ever possible. And in order to get him there, I need to follow that trail. So it's a really long answer, and I'm sorry. I hope it wasn't boring you. Just so you understand, like, I don't think he's sidelined. I think he made phenomenal choices, and we've now left him in a place where he is more heroic and has more potential as a character than ever before. But that's just my one man's opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone on the record on this podcast multiple times before. I brought this up in my Iron Fist 2 pre-show thing, is I really don't like when Danny uses the fist a lot. I like showing the martial arts master, so I'd be happy if Danny was without the fist for 2 seasons. Like, I would be totally okay with that, as long as he was kicking butt. But I guess my problem was, as I was watching the show, I just felt like Danny was being putting down a lot and Colleen was being propped up a lot at Danny's expense, if that makes any sense.
I think it's interesting. I think that, well, one of my biggest complaints my biggest issues with season 1 of Iron Fist, with the Defenders, and even sometimes in Luke Cage, is it seems like everyone's always making fun of Danny and they're always doubting the truth of his journey, and they're you know, and I understand why it happens. It's done to normalize the idea of dragons and all that stuff, right? Because if someone said that in your life, it's normal. I understand why it's done, that's crazy, haha, you know. But to me, it adds up to a lot of people kind of not taking him seriously, right? And I would say I don't think there's anywhere in this season where people are making fun of Danny at all. And in fact, there's moments where, you know, people call it out. Like even Misty says, like, you know, she says, "Whoa, you know, dragons and bulls and crane sisters, and wow, it's a trip to know that my skills like mean something in a world that contains these things." Like people are starting to understand the level and value of what Danny has and does. I don't think Colleen's journey is at the expense of Danny, really. I think that Colleen is someone who has, again, they're in a relationship, yes, but she has her own story, you know, and Danny has his story. And what I love this season that we were able to do, was very important to me, is that those two stories, they collide and they cross, but it's not like Colleen doesn't go, she doesn't say to Danny, "You're a terrible Iron Fist, I should be Iron Fist." She says, "It's your birthright, I'll help you. What do you need to do this?" Right? That's what she says to him in episode 9. She goes, "Absolutely not." You know, she goes, "Don't know." And then Danny says to her, he pleads with her, and he goes, I can't do it. I can't do it. And then she basically said to him at the top of the episode, "Well, you have to." Right? So how is that her saying you're a terrible Iron Fist? She's telling him to take the power back. She says, "You've learned the lesson. You've trained." She says, you thought before you acted, and you did it so quickly, and you've gotten your body back in shape in a record amount of time. She's so congratulatory, and all she wants is for him to be open and honest, and she congratulates him when he is. So, I mean, I don't know. You tell me, where is it at the expense of Danny?
I guess I more just meant in terms of pure screen time and stuff like that, and fights and story beats. Like, to me, as I was watching the season, it just felt like Danny was just getting beat up a lot for the last few episodes, and Colleen was just getting more screen time and kicking a lot more butt. And I don't know, I guess a lot of other Danny Rand fans felt that way as well. I guess we just felt we were getting a bit shafted because we know that season 1, like, Colleen was universally loved. Danny wasn't exactly, so I don't know if like it kind of felt like a response to that.
I hear that, but you know, but just, you know, it wasn't. I didn't build the season as a response to any of those things. I wasn't a part of season 1, and I didn't sit down with the responses to season 1 and craft a season 2 in response to anything. That was 100% not my jam. I was working on a different show. I didn't read any of the reviews. I watched the season like all the other fans, and I thought, whoa, you know, and here's the other thing that just, again, that maybe hopefully this will help you with it, and maybe other people as well, but, you know, crafting awesome fight sequences is incredibly difficult for lots of reasons. One of the main reasons it's difficult is the amount of time it takes, and the amount of rehearsal it takes, and the amount of strain it puts on human bodies, you know?
Yeah.
And one thing that Clayton Barber wanted to do this season was he wanted our actors, as much as possible, meaning Finn and Jessica and Sasha, to do as much of their own stunts as possible. And I've read some reviews saying, like, oh, well, you put him in a mask, you could use the stunt doubles. That is 100% not true. I put Danny in a mask because I wanted to see him in a mask.
Yeah.
Because it made sense to me that if he's running around fighting crime at night like Daredevil, he would wear a mask.
Yeah.
There were times on the set where David Armstrong, Stretch, who is Danny's thin stunt double, who's an amazing, amazing martial artist and a phenomenal part of the show, was standing around with nothing to do because Finn Jones was doing all of his own stunts. And the same for our other stunt doubles and for our other actors. And what that does is it puts an incredible amount of strain on a performer, because and at the same time, you know, you've got to learn all your lines, you got to be in all these scenes, you've got to rehearse, you've got to, right? So just to be really 100% honest, the only way to make a really phenomenal martial arts TV show, I think, is you have to have balanced the number of fights between different people so that people have time to rest and recover, and so that people have time to learn new and complicated fights, right? So we had to do that this season, and I don't want to I don't need to go into the details of the scheduling and the layout, but you know, I would say, although there might have been more Danny Rand fighting in season 1, but I don't think the fighting style was as visceral or powerful as we were able to evolve it to, and it wasn't as much Finn Jones doing the stunts, and it is now. That dude is a machine. He's incredible. He put himself through, and by the way, everyone did it, and they were amazing, but the real weight was carried by Finn, Sasha, and Jessica Henwick, who were, and Alice Eve as well. I mean, she had to do all of that, her own fight sequences, and learn all that. But so I understand from the outside, it looks at you look at oh well, you know, there was much more Danny, and now there's much more Colleen. Colleen didn't come into season 1 till what episode? Colleen wasn't going to fight in season 1 till what episode? Till later episodes, right? Because you meet the character, and then she doesn't fight till later on. So in the structure of season 1, Colleen didn't fight till later, and you had more Danny fighting in the beginning. Yeah. But and that put incredible strain on Finn Jones. It literally on his body, right? Because you know, he didn't have the time he needed, or anyone needed, or anyone would be able to do to recover, and it meant having to use many more stunt doubles and all that. So a lot of what you're seeing is, I think, a more holistic version of how you make an action show, and which is that you gotta, on a TV schedule, which means you gotta parse it out a little different. So, but just to answer your original question, to me, in terms of how I feel about Danny Rand and about the character, he fought a dragon. No one else has, that I know of in this mythology. He has the brand burned into his chest, and he is a hero, and it has been his life's journey to be the immortal Iron Fist. I'm not interested in walking away from that. You know, I think that is important. I also am incredibly proud of the fact that we've introduced the first female Asian superhero in the Netflix Marvel Universe on Netflix, and that it's Colleen Wing. I think that Jessica is a phenomenal actress and a really powerful performer, and I'm really I think it's really cool, and I'm also interested to see what her version or story as associated with that power might be. So I think, for me, I feel like we're in a really interesting position to tell really interesting stories about these characters that we have hopefully grown to know and love. So I think everything you're saying is valid. I just, you know, again, just you know, it was not it wasn't a reaction. It was I feel like a necessity, and also I am 100% committed to Danny Rand, and I love working with Finn Jones and think that he's a powerhouse. And I think there's a phenomenal story for him ahead, should I get the chance.
Okay, excellent. Thanks very much for answering that, just completely honestly. It's great. It's refreshing. It's nice to have these discussions, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's good for me too. Look, you know, I think also it's I've been outside of lots of different, it happens to me all the time. You know, I watch shows and I have my reaction to them, and I'm always like, whoa, or I love this, or I don't like that. And then for me, it's always, when I get a chance to sit and talk to somebody who was involved in the making of a show, or and you get to ask why were choices made, or was this because of this or that, or, it's always really illuminating,
Yeah.
But I think that and I think I totally get as a fan of material. There's plenty of things that happen in movies or shows where I go, oh, like that bums me out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't. But so I don't take any of it personally. In fact, as I said, it's like being in the back of a comic store. Everyone has a very strong opinion because we're all passionate about these characters and we all connect to them in different ways. So I welcome people's strong opinions and people's point of view about things, and that just shows me also how much people care about the show and the characters. So it's all a good thing.
Yeah, awesome, cool. Yeah, very, very glad. Hopefully, that's the only difficult question on here. Anyway, everything else is easy breeze. So, let's go to a Colleen question then, since we just talked about her a lot. So, I'm curious personally because, as you mentioned, Danny's the only one who's actually fought a dragon and defeated one in the show. Will we possibly see Colleen's character deal with the sort of temptations and addictions that Danny had with the Iron Fist, or does her not having a connection to Shao the Undying sort of make things different for her, if you get what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And that's something that, I think will be, again, should we get the chance to talk about it in the writer's room, it's something we can talk about. I don't love, just so you know about me as a writer, I don't really love repeating story, at the same time. So I think Colleen, we set up the season in season 2 very clearly. She says what her issue is to Misty in that last scene between the two of them in episode 10. She says, how do you make peace with a weapon, right? What does that mean?
Yeah.
And I think that that's a very different question than am I worthy to carry the mantle of the Iron Fist, protector of Kunlun, and enemy of the hand? So I think that there's and the mythology part of it about whether or not you fought the dragon or not. Again, I think that's to be explored. But I'm less interested in the I don't know. I just don't. I think there's a really interesting story to tell about how the Iron Fist, wielding the Iron Fist, impacts Colleen's life, her choices, and her day to day. I would probably shy away from repeating a story, though. I don't think I want to see the same story twice.
Yeah. So I guess on a similar tangent, then, will the show explore Danny's tie to Shao the Undying more? He may not have the fist, but I feel defeating the dragon in combat and putting its essence into yourself is not something you can really forget. If that makes any sense. It's
amazing. Is that it's such a cool. It's just even talking about it with you now. It's so funny. It's not funny. It's just real. Is that so much of this show, is tied up in a mythology that we haven't seen. Or we've seen very little of.
Yeah.
And I think that it's interesting because everyone wants to see it. And I go back to Game of Thrones. It took a long time when I was reading those books. Everyone in those books, they do the same thing. They go oh, what's over the wall to the north? The wildlings, nothing else.
Yeah.
And then oh yeah, what about dragons and dire wolves? Oh, yeah, come on. And then you get to see little tiny baby things. And, one day they're going to grow into dragons, and then 5 years later, you're watching, a princess astride a dragon with fire coming out of its mouth, and you're like, finally, yes, And I feel like we're kind of in that same situation here, which is I love dragons.
Yeah.
I love Shao. I think it's such an important part of the mythology, and I really tried this season to integrate as much as I could And I think that we were able to do that really nicely with Ward and his addiction story.
Yeah.
In that conversation, episode 5, between Danny and Ward about what the dragon means metaphorically to him, and we were able to do that. So I want to explore the mythology more. Again, just like a costume, man, would I love to see a dragon.
Yeah.
I think again, it's something that has to be done right. So if there's a way to do it right, meaning, there's time and money and story that supports it, then we'll definitely explore that connection.
Yeah, because I think Shao-Lao is an interesting character in itself as well. Definitely look forward to seeing what that holds. Don't worry, I don't expect to see an actual dragon. So, but
to see one, I want to see a dragon. Bad.
I mean, I really want to see it. I'm just not getting my hopes up. No,
also, look, just like, don't you want to see it awesome? Like, you don't want to see a bad one, do you? Like, if I was like, oh, well, you can definitely see a terrible dragon, would you want to see that? No. Like, don't you want to see a good one?
What if you had, so hear me out here. This is my pitch to the showrunner, guys. Okay. Big news here. So, what if Danny fighting the dragon, right? So you're in the cave, but you only saw their shadows fighting, and you, saw breaths of fire and stuff. And then at the end, see.
Well, you know what? It's so funny. I've worked on a bunch of shows, that have monsters in them. I worked on Sleepy Hollow, and what you're pitching is what every writer pitches a showrunner when they've got a really expensive monster that they're pitching, and they go, "Oh, it'll all be shadows," and then they come to the director and they go, "So the plan here is we just want to see shadows," and then the director laughs because it's what you're talking about. It's a great writerly idea, and and yes, it would save money, but you want if you got to a cavern and you just saw a blast of fire and a couple of shadows fighting, if you did that and that was an episode, I feel, Connor, that you would call me up and you'd be like, how could you not show
for the record, guys, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, ever since season 1, I've been pitching that shadow thing because I never expected to see the dragon in Netflix. Because I see the budgets, and most of the budget goes into being on New York, right? But I get your point. A lot of people would be very angry if that's all we got. I mean, if it makes you feel better, you can just redirect the hate mail to this podcast. Have a couple of episodes out of it.
Oh, it's so funny. It's so funny. Well, I don't think it's interesting. I don't look at it as hate mail. I look at it as
constructive criticism.
Well, that, but also it's just passion,
Yeah.
And it's look, and it's you never know, and I don't know, passion. Sometimes, sometimes strange things happen. We're not living in a world where Quentin Tarantino is pitching a Star Trek movie, and there's going to be a movie called The Joker, and and I don't know if you saw the news today about the Disney streaming possibility of
Yeah, no, I saw that. It's pretty big.
Loki, and here we are living in a world where all these things are possible, and so much is changing, and also look, technology is changing. From year to year, on these shows, different things become possible based on massive leaps in technology. And having worked on a couple of shows now over the past 6 years that have been VFX heavy, from Falling Skies to Sleepy Hollow and Heroes Are Born, and then now over to this universe. There's new ways are being invented to do lots of different things. So I think if the longer this show is on the air, the more chance there is to explore interesting stuff. I think again, it's the best version of this is rather than how to solve the production issue, the real issue to solve is the story issue, which is Like, why is it necessary to see that?
Yeah.
To show it, like, besides the fact that we just want to see it because it's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think that, that's the, and I'm not saying there's not an answer, and believe me, if there is an answer, me and my writers will find it, and hopefully we'll be able to pitch it and get it out there. But I think that's the question, right? Is does the story demand it?
Just write them into a corner where they have no choice but to approve a huge CGI budget. Because then they'd be like, well, the entire season depends on this one scene, so we have to give them the budget for it.
What my friend Tim Stefano says is who produced season 2 of Iron Fist, and a lot of the amazing stuff he saw on screen was possible because he was able to find a way to literally make it happen.
Wow.
What he always says is you have to be careful, because if you make the wrong choice like that, then the rest of your season is your characters sitting around a couch, eating cake, drinking tea, talking about crumpets, and that's the truth. Is that we're lucky to have the resources that we're given to make these shows, but they're finite, and you have to use them well. So it's like the trade-off is you get a dragon fight, but then everyone's eating team crumpets.
I'm a huge fan of Frasier, so that doesn't sound too bad to me, actually.
What?
I'm a huge fan of Frasier, so that doesn't sound too bad to me. Just everyone eating crumpets and witty remarks at each other. But I'm sure
it sounds great.
A lot of people would be upset.
Pitch that show. I love that. It's the Ward and Joy move into a one-bedroom apartment together, and it's like The Odd Couple, but on Iron Fist.
Oh man, I'd totally watch a Ward and Joy sitcom.
Yeah.
So, let's see. So, Danny obviously tied a fair bit into, well, it didn't really tie into Daredevil, but the Daredevil's presence was kind of in the early episodes of this season with him sort of charging Danny to take up protecting New York. And Typhoid Mary is obviously a really famous Daredevil villain, one of my favorite Daredevil villains. Can we expect to see him or Typhoid in Daredevil season 3? Probably can't.
See who?
Danny or Typhoid.
I don't know. So funny. I've become one of the great things about working at Marvel is that you get to collaborate with and talk to other showrunners in a way that you don't get to do on many other situations, where, sometimes there'll be a crossover between two shows and you'll talk or you'll meet socially, but to be able to hang out with and collaborate with and share characters with and share story with these incredible writers, and producers and creators is just, to me, has been one of the greatest pleasures that I've ever experienced. And, and when we're, like, for example, when we were going to put Missy Knight in season 2, I watched the Luke Cage season 2 before it was released so that I could know where Missy was at, and that was fun. And Eric Olson, who runs Daredevil, he offered to sit and talk to me and tell me every detail of Daredevil season 3, and I absolutely refused. We hang out all the time, and both at work and socially. And anytime he says to me like, I'm like, shh, don't tell me, because I want to be there to binge it the day it comes out. So that's the long answer. The short answer is I have no idea, because I haven't read it, I haven't watched it, I don't know anything about it. I've seen as much as you've seen.
I mean, I drool at the prospect of Danny popping up in Daredevil season 3, so I would not have had your willpower to resist him telling you everything. I really, so Typhoid Mary was a very interesting choice, because I've seen you're a very big fan of her in Daredevil. Why did you bring her to Iron Fists? I'm curious.
It really was, one of the very first things that I pitched to Jeff Loeb was the theme of the season, which was duality and balance. and about all of our characters searching for balance and expressing their duality. And he kind of came back at me and said, "Hey, while you're saying that, this is something I've been kicking around, which is the idea of, and I think it would work really nicely what you're talking about." And then he sort of asked me, "Are you a fan of Typhoid Mary?" And I just lost my mind and said yes. And so the idea really came from Marvel,
Okay.
but it was an idea that I think flowed out of, I think Jeff saw an opportunity because of theme, but also I think he's sort of been, it's interesting. It's a cool choice to take a character that people think of as a Daredevil character and tell her story or introduce her in Iron Fist. So yeah, it was cool. I was, when he first told me, I was like, "Is this real? Are you messing with me?" And he was like, "No, it's real." And then, ever since then, I've been very, very excited about it. And I think Alice Eve she just nailed it. She's
she's
talented.
Great. She was fantastic as Typhoid. I guess on that sort of tangent, a lot of people have asked me to ask you, is there any chance of Moon Knight or Shang-Chi showing up at all in the future? Have they crossed your minds at all?
Well, it's funny. The whole Moon Knight thing is, came up, I think, because of Twitter. We talked about Moon Knight in the writer's room because he also has DID like Typhoid Mary did. So we brought up DID, but we never talked about, I love Moon Knight. We never talked about Moon Knight being in the season.
Okay.
We just talked about the character. And I'm a gigantic Moon Knight fan, so I understand why people would be excited about it. I love the idea of Moon Knight being anywhere, anytime. I think it's a great character and a great supporting group of character. I love it. Shang-Chi, also, I think is a phenomenal character. I don't know what the plans are with Marvel about that character or about characters from his particular comics. So I couldn't tell you. I think that would be a Marvel question about whether that's a character they'd want to use or not use.
Okay.
I do have other characters that I love from the comics that I would love to bring in, but again, it also depends on
any examples there. Or?
No, but I will say one thing. It's funny. I noticed today that a lot of people were mentioning that there might be like a Fantastic Four reference in season 2 because of the Baxter Street, but Baxter Street is a street in Chinatown. The Baxter Building is in Midtown, but Baxter Street I believe, is in Chinatown. So it was one of those things where I feel like the Moon Knight thing, it kind of went out of control there for a minute. Where
it always goes out of control with Moon Knight.
Yeah, people might have. That's right. People might have taken a comment and a little wishful thinking took over. But there's many characters I would love to get my hands on. One thing I will say is that I've always been a giant fan of characters that appear less frequently in comics. I like the C and D characters. Yeah. Those are my favorites.
Totally. Yeah, it's the same. I love my B, C, D list Marvel characters.
Yeah, so it's like, I'd be not, look, this is just as an example. I don't think it actually happened, but I'd be like, how about Elsa Bloodstone? How about, J. Jonah Jameson as, the Man-Wolf? I'm always pitching, the people in my writers' room laugh because they're like, did you really like those characters? I'm like, yeah, I really do.
Wow.
When I was a kid, I thought Man-Wolf was awesome. So to me, it's always like, I'm always looking for the most awesome D-list character that no one's ever heard of, to find a way to bring in more than I'd be looking to cross over with, with a larger scale, I don't know, character.
Yeah. Cool. Let's see. So, obviously the fighting was escalated this season. Did you have any part in creating Danny's sort of fighting style? Like what fighting styles he used, or was that all up to the fight coordinator?
No, we talk about everything. I mean, Clayton and I are it's a real collaboration. Okay. You know, we had many, many conversations about the fighting styles. I talk about it more in terms of story, of course, you know, like like, for example, you know, I really wanted, in the writer's room, we really wanted Davos to be very directed. Like, you know, if he makes a motion, it's a final one. You know, he doesn't hesitate, and he's very direct, and he's always in motion, and he's also tortured, and that all his, you know, he's the kind of guy who does he throws he doesn't waste a lot of time. He does a lot of kill hits, right? He just goes for broke, you know? And so we talked about that with Clayton, and then Clayton came back and said, "Oh, I see his fighting as a mixture of X, Y, and you know."
Okay.
The other thing we talked about a lot with Clayton, which I thought was really interesting, which was wonderful, was again going back to Kunlun, which is people are like, "Well, what kind of martial arts do these guys know, like specifically?" And I'm like,
"Yeah,
well, they learned Kunlun Kung Fu, so what's that?" You know, and according to, again, this is according to defenders. And again, maybe what Alexandra was saying was not true. I don't know, but it seemed like, you know, there was a basis of martial arts, but that many other cultures over 2,000 years may have integrated into that martial arts, so that is a very unique fighting style. That's a Kunlunian form of fighting style, right? So that was the basis for some of the conversations I had with Clayton, and then he built that from his knowledge of real martial arts.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, it was even in the early comics they mentioned that Kunlun teaches stuff like ninjutsu, taekwondo, and kung fu, judo, jiu-jitsu, so that's cool. Was there any specific style Danny used, or was it just, you know, mixed bag of all sorts of things? Like in terms of what Finn Jones used, I should say.
That would be a better. Well, that would be a better. Well, Finn did a lot of training in a lot of different areas. He, you know, from mental training, you know, from meditation and yoga to learning a lot about the philosophy behind martial arts, and then he also did a lot of stunt work. So he worked with the stunt team to you know, better integrate his fighting into and to learn more about stunt work, so he could do most of his own fighting. And then he also trained with an actual black belt, and I think who was in Wing Chun? No, he was in something. The black belt was a real deal, really serious teacher, and he also had a number of different people who brought different sort of styles of fighting to him, and then again Clayton, who came up with Sammo Hung on martial law and has worked with some of the great stunt coordinators and fight coordinators and directors and martial artists over the years. He sort of handled the specifics of fighting styles.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's cool that you went to learn from a serious black belt.
Yeah. Finn took it really seriously.
You worked a lot on the relationship of the Daughters of the Dragon this season, Misty and Colleen. Yeah. Did you enjoy working with Simone Missick? Did she sort of become like a regular cast member with all the other guys?
Yeah. Oh yeah, she's fantastic, and she got along with everyone so well. Like a lot of that chemistry that you're seeing on screen between her and Jessica Hamwick is because, you know, they get along so well. There's a little bit of chemistry there as well between her and Tom Pelphrey that I thought was kind of great.
Is that going to go anywhere? Or?
Who knows? I mean, it's pretty great. Yeah. Simone was incredibly gracious and wonderful to work with, and she's a real powerhouse of an actor, and also a tremendously lovely person. And she just brought so much to the season, and we were not just as an actor and as a character, but also it was just great to have her around. She's absolutely lovely.
Cool. Is there any, because obviously there's a lot of people still a bit upset about Colleen and Danny being together, but obviously it can't be exactly like the comics. I was just wondering, is there any more interactions, or do you have is there going to be more building of a relationship between Misty and Danny? Not necessarily romantic, just I enjoy seeing those two characters interact on screen.
Well, here's the deal, and it's funny. Again, like I've done the research. Do you know how many times Danny and Misty were on screen together before they met each other in season 2 of Iron Fist?
0, right?
0 times.
Yeah.
Okay. So, he paid for the arm, right?
Yeah.
And clearly they've had some sort of interactions. If they have met, then it must have been briefly, right? Or we don't know, but they don't even know each other. So I think, again, in the evolution of these characters, then I totally want to see them. There's a lot of moments in the season where they are having conversations that they've never had before and trying to connect with each other. And I think they end the season in a place where they're much, much closer, because now they actually know each other and spend time together. So I'm very interested in seeing where that relationship could go. And absolutely.
Yeah, I loved when they sort of clashed, because it's kind of like the unstoppable force meets the immovable wall when it comes to Danny and Misty butting heads. Danny's so stubborn and Misty just won't take no for an answer, and it was really fun seeing those two work off each other. So this is from Carl, my other co-host. In the final episode, Danny is armed with Colleen's sword, yet at the end, Davos still has both hands. Why did you decide to skip this perfect opportunity to cut off Davos's hand?
I don't know. I hadn't, no one pitched me cutting off the hand. I also, if you cut off Davos' hand, then how are we going to have Davos? Don't you want to see Davos come back? I mean, don't you want to see him fight? Like, I want to.
Well,
I don't know.
There's a really cool few panels in Immortal Iron Fist where his hand gets cut off.
He's got that. Yeah, he's got the ghost hand.
He grows like the Chi hand, but obviously that might be a bit difficult to pull off.
No, we could do it. I mean, that was I think it's a really awesome question. It hadn't occurred to anyone to cut his hand off.
Yeah, it didn't even occur to me. Like, I missed that.
Didn't Colleen cut Bakuda's head off? So, I don't want to repeat.
Oh, not Davos's head, his hand, just his hand.
No, I know, but still, it's like how many body parts do you want to have? We're cutting off hands, cutting off heads. Come on, we got to draw the line somewhere.
Hey, that's why the original Star Wars trilogy was so great, because everyone was getting their hands cut off. So
that's true. So, hey, Connor, why don't you throw one more my way, and then I'm going to have to bail.
Yep.
So,
no worries.
Is that cool?
Yep, that's all good.
Pick one. Pick a good one.
Okay. I mean, I could ask about the show, or I could satisfy my own curiosity. Let's just see. I actually covered most of everything, so that's good. Let's end this on a fun note. So, I read you worked with Jackie Chan, and I've just got to ask, what's he like? Is he a real serious worker, like I think he is, or?
He is one of the coolest people I've ever met, and one of the most gracious and kind and funny people. He's incredibly hardworking. He's a genius, an amazing actor and director and writer, and just one of the rare, iconic superstars world cinema. So I think he lives up to that. Like when you meet him, the thing that's so cool is he's all those things, and yet he's incredibly kind and lovely, and to everybody. He's an absolute pleasure to work with. I didn't get a chance to. I wrote a movie for him. It didn't get made, but I did get a chance to go with my writing partner at the time, Stu Zickerman. We did a week-long stint working on action rewrites for Rush Hour 2, and we flew to Vegas and were able to be there with him. And that was one of the best experiences of my life, watching him craft an action sequence. And then we got to have dinner with him, actually, in New York, when we were writing this movie for him. And the movie was supposed to take place on top of the World Trade Center. Jackie was supposed to be a window washer, who gets involved in this whole plot up there. And we went up to the top of the World Trade Center with him, and he looked out across the buildings and said, maybe we stretch a wire, across these two, and I was like, and I could walk on it. And I was like, but don't you do your own stunts? And he goes, yeah, let's not do that. And then we had dinner afterwards, and I got to sit next to him, and I had a great time. And then at a certain point, I said to him, do you mind if I ask you some sort of fan questions, about your movies? And he was like, please, go ahead. So
wow. We
talked a lot about Drunken Master 2, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And he showed me the scar on his arm where when he falls back onto the hot coals in the final fight sequence, he was wearing a fire retardant jacket, but he really did fall back on coals. And in one of the takes, he forgot to roll his sleeve down. Oh, so he rolled back onto red hot coals, and he showed me that on his arm, and talked about the making of that fight sequence. So,
wow, awesome.
If anyone has the opportunity to see him, to learn from him in any way, I would jump at it. He's as I say, he's one of the true icons of world cinema, and a great guy.
Outside of Jackie Chan cult as well, probably. Yeah.
He could. He's certainly got
following
some amazing films that he's made. He's really a tremendous force.
All right. Well, I'll let you go, but just one last thing. What's the next project you're working on? Is there anything you want people to check out, or?
Well, I'm hoping that the next project I'm working on is Iron Fist season 3. Let's keep our fingers crossed there.
Definitely.
That would be the number one thing that I would love to be working on.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely be giving the show another watch, so that'll give more views. Hopefully, we get that season 3.
Thank you for all these excellent questions, and it's been great chatting with you. And it's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, thanks very much. We went an hour over time, but I'm very happy we had some really good talk. So, yeah, if you ever want to come on again, just give us a shout.
All right, we'll do.
All right, you have a good one.
You too.
See ya. Bye. And that was my interview with Mr. Raven Metzner. I hope you guys enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed recording that. It was awesome to talk with another super fan of Iron Fist who happened to be showrunner of Iron Fist Season 2. Crazy times we live in, and must be a dream come true for him. So feel free to leave feedback on that episode. It was my first interview after all. Even if your feedback is you're a sellout fraud hack and I hate you because you didn't answer my question or anything like that. Sorry for anyone whose questions I missed. We did go an hour over time, which I would like to thank Mr. Metzner for staying that long. There was just not enough room to get everything in, but I believe I generally covered everyone's questions, almost everyone's questions. So yeah, I hope you guys are happier with it, and I'll see you on the next episode, Iron Fist Season 2 review plus feedback. I believe Carl will be joining me for that one, so yeah, until next time, may your iron guns become unto things of iron and chi. Peace. Iron Fist and all other characters in these comics are properties of Marvel and Disney. Any music or images we use belong to their respective copyright holders. We do this for fun, so please don't sue us. You can contact us at sonsofthedragonpodcast@gmail.com. Just send us mail, comments, thoughts, anything you want really. It doesn't even have to be related to Iron Fist. If you don't want it read on the air though, make sure you mention that. You can also find us on Facebook, the Immortal Iron Fist Podcast, Sons of the Dragon. Our Twitter, @Iron Fist Podcast. Our SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Sons of the Dragon, hyphens where the spaces are. Our YouTube, Connor Carl. Just search Iron Fist Podcast and you'll find us real quick. We are also on iTunes. If you find us there, give us a review and rate us. If it's less than 5 stars, please say why so we can improve the show. And we're on Podcast Garden in the literature section, and last but not least, head over to our WordPress, Sons of the Dragon, the Immortal Iron Fist Podcast.wordpress.com. That's where I put all the show notes. And I would like to thank Thomas Tissot for letting us use his Iron Fist theme song for the start of our show. And finally, thanks to you guys for listening.